All right, and welcome to Saturday morning edition of Sidelines. Rob Brown here, broadcasting live from Red River Ford Toyota Studios in Wynne, Arkansas. They are open 9 a.m., 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Service department guys, Austin Futrell on the team, are open back there right now. 25 service bays, man. You need to get your car, truck, SUV worked on. It'll get you out of there in a flash. And check them out on the website, redriverfordtoyota.com. They will deliver anywhere. They are great people to work with. All right, Rob Brown along with Jimmy Hodge. Got a great lineup today. It is the Saturday Roundtable. We're going to start off. Jason Caldwell inside the Auburn Tigers will join us here in the first segment. Frank Duffy will be checking in from, I believe, Baton Rouge. Go Tigers. With us, second hour, Buddy Martin, GatorbaitMedia.com will join us. Kind of a sports writers, again, roundtable where we talk true grit journalism. It ain't about getting it first. It's about getting it right. Remember, you're writing about real people. That's what you got to think about that all the time. We are here every Monday through Saturday, 8 to 10 a.m. Central, 9 to 11 a.m. East of the Chattahoochee. Also on 680thefan.com, the podcast park up in Atlanta. They're expecting, I think, over 4.3 million people to go to that site this year. A lot of traffic. It's busy. We're also debuting today. Radio Alabama Group has got us now on an all-country format, 96.3 Kicks FM country in Alexander City, Alabama. Hello to everybody listening in Central Alabama, all you folks in Sylacauga and out on Lake Martin today. Good morning. We know you're going to have a great time. And sit back, get you something to eat and a cup of coffee or whatever you do in the morning. We're going to talk college football for the next 2 hours. And follow us on Twitter. We need you at Sidelines_live. And I want to say, Jason, man, you can feel it. Tigers started practice yesterday morning. And recruit, you got 6 commitments in the class of 23, all 4 stars. And now the next question is, what are the takeaways from recruiting up to this point? What does Auburn need to be doing more of? And then we'll get into how the early practices are going.
Yeah, it's kicked up a little bit. Obviously, Big Cat Weekend, you get a couple of 24 commitments in the on board, and then you've added Wilkie Denaud, Ashley Williams, guys in that 23 class, guys I think that are going to be helpful on that defensive line. Then the next thing is offensive line. That's it. Connor Lew committed to Miami yesterday. That's the guy that I thought probably 4 days ago that Auburn was in pretty good shape for, and it just changed in a real hurry there. But that's kind of the one. That's the I kind of said, but that's the proverbial elephant in the room when you start talking about Auburn right now. And for the last few years, is offensive line recruiting.
Yeah.
And you look, and they're going to lose probably. They're going to lose at least 6 guys after this season on the offensive line alone, and all 6 of those guys have starting experience. You could add as many as 3 more. You could lose up to 9 guys on the offensive line this year, and with the transfer portal the way it is, you never know truly how many you could lose. I mean, you could lose 2 or 3 more, and it would be a disaster. And so, right now that you got to have probably a minimum of 7 guys, and you got to have probably 3 guys that are ready to go, which means you're going to have to go get a couple of potential transfers that are ready to play right away, and you got to sign probably 2 or 3 high school guys that are at least ready to compete. And then you need a couple of developmental guys every year, no matter what, on the offensive line. So you start looking at the numbers and going, you need probably 7 guys, and I know you have 1 in Braden Joyner, and so you start going, where do those come from? That's the question mark now, and that's the big one when you start looking at Auburn, and it's kind of the same story that's been the last 4 or 5 years.
Well, along the line of offensive linemen, we've talked about this with folks we have covering A&M and Texas high school football. They're not producing the linemen out there because of all the spreads and the hurry up, no huddle offenses. This is a year in the state of Alabama. There are 22 4-star recruits, half a dozen 5-stars. It's a generationally good year. It's exceptional. And how many of the top 15 players is Auburn legitimately in the mix with?
Yeah. Well, I went back and looked, Auburn had Big Cat Weekend recently, and you start thinking about, that's the time when you get a lot of your bigger names on campus. Of that group, the only guys that were on campus were the current commitment, which is Carmelo English from Central Phoenix City. That's the only one of those guys that was there. You looking, I do think that you start looking, a lot of those guys are already committed, but I think Quay Russaw is probably the guy that, from Carver Montgomery, him and James Smith both have visited a couple of times. I think Quay Russaw is probably the Auburn's most, likely guy. Don't know how likely he is as a 5-star guy. I think he's the most likely of the group. Right now, that's it. And unfortunately, that's kind of where Auburn is. They're kind of going, okay, they're trying to just stay in the game and see what can happen, if the season starts out well and you start winning games and doing those things. And that's kind of, it's almost on hold where you go, hey, let's keep us in mind, stay in the picture, and see what we do, to start the season. And I think that's the case for a lot of these guys. And NIL's obviously involved for a lot of these guys and what they're doing and looking at. Can you compete with, Texas A&M and now Alabama's up their game some, obviously, when you look at it, and some others, and all those things rolled into one make it really, really tough right now for them to compete for those top guys.
Yeah, and you think about getting off to a 5-0 start. That changes the narrative. Some of these kids that are committed to Penn State or Clemson or other schools around the country, they might change their minds if that happens. But Auburn, that's something Auburn can control. Go out there and just win games, change that perception. But that's a difficult task. But you open up with Mercer, San Jose State, then you got Penn State. That Penn State game, Penn State last year won 7 or 8 games, but they're a name. They're a big national name. They've been around a long time, and that'd be like getting a home run. Bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, 2 strikes. You're down 4-2, and you hit a 3-run homer. That's how big that game is, I think, for Auburn, Jason. And you laid out a good case. Brian Harsin is doing, I hope, everything that he can. But I'm just going to ask you this. Are you hearing that Auburn's all over Georgia and all over Florida and all over those states, and much less are they all over the state of Alabama like they were, say, in the past?
I think they're trying to get to that point. But I think, when you start talking about recruiting, the thing, and one of the biggest things is relationships. Obviously, they're heading into year 2. They've had a year to build those, but I think it took them a while to get their feet on the ground and figure out exactly what it took in this league. And when that happens, sometimes you're already behind. And I think that was the case for, say Peter Woods at Thompson and some of these guys that have already committed. Jaleel Hurley at Florence and Tony Mitchell at Thompson. Those are 5-star guys. A.J. Harris at Central Phoenix City, who transferred from Glenwood. Those are 5-star guys that had already, been on campuses multiple times and done things even, as sophomores and early in their junior years. And so those guys, they had such a head start. And I think for Auburn, you almost had to blitz everything as quickly as possible last year. And when you kind of try to figure that out, you turn around and you're already too late. And so I think they've done a much better job in 2024 of kind of figuring out, well, you got to get going early. You don't have any choice. But in this 23 class, you look up again and you're behind. So I think because of that, you got to play catch up. But I do think there's some guys out there that I think are good football players that I think Auburn is in on and can add and can add quality to this class. Local kid like J.C. Hart from Lochapoka, I think, can be a quality player in this class. And some of those guys, they may not be 4 or 5-star guys, but those are guys that Auburn has won with in the past and Auburn can win with in the future. And so I think those guys are out there, but I think it's that line of scrimmage, and to me it all comes down. I think everything washes out if you can get those guys and figure it out. And it may be transfer portal for the offensive line this year, but I do think you're right. You got to figure out a way to get some of these top kids in the state, and unfortunately, I think right now you're going to have to win games and build some momentum to do that. But I kind of come back to that other question: how many is enough? How many games is enough for a kid to go, okay, they changed my mind. Now I'm in. Is it 8 for somebody? Is it 9 for somebody else? Will it take 10 for somebody else? Is there enough for somebody? There's a question you don't know, but to me, that's the starting point, and I think the coaches know that. I think they understand where they are, which is kids want to see it on the field.
Yeah, no question about it. Jimmy, if you're a high school prospect and Auburn's calling on you, and then Georgia and Alabama are, and LSU, Tennessee, Florida, what's Auburn going to need to do to get your attention?
Well, I think they're going to have to obviously win games. And of course, Jason and I have talked about this for the past couple of years. It's going to be critical for Auburn to have players drafted that play their position, so that those players know that if they come to Auburn, that they can be developed into NFL players if they are good enough. And then secondly, once those players get in the NFL, I think it's really important for those guys to be successful and be contributors to whatever NFL team they're on very early in their careers, so that these high school prospects are aware of the fact that if they go to Auburn, hey, I'm going to be ready to play in the NFL if I'm developed and I show that my skills are good enough to be able to play at that level, and then again become a contributor to my NFL team. I think more and more kids are very cognizant of that. And as far as the offensive line goes, I mean, that is just kind of the bullseye now for every program in the country, because it's harder and harder to find quality offensive linemen. You don't have, at a young age, offensive lineman camps like you do 7-on-7 camps, where skill position players get to be developed at an early age and exposed to other top players from other parts of the country, and they get to compete against those guys at an early age. So it's a really complicated scenario. And finally, when Jason was talking about the latest offensive development, Miami is the latest 800-pound gorilla to enter the recruiting arena in the Sun Belt. I mean, Mario Cristobal has come in and just made tremendous strides, combined with the fact that the notorious booster, John Ruiz, is throwing around huge amounts of money in being able to develop Miami's NIL plan. And I'm sure they also have some collective groups that are involved. And as a result, Miami has made huge strides on the recruiting trail. So they're just all kinds of things that you have to deal with if you're a Power 5 program.
Yeah. And, Jimmy lays out a good case. Jason, that's a concern if you're Auburn, and Alabama has been doing it too, but Auburn's done really well in Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties. Where are they now?
Well, the problem is that it's not just there. Miami comes to Kennesaw Mountain, Georgia, and gets an offensive line commitment that a kid, Connor Lew, that Auburn was recruiting yesterday. It's not just the fact that they're keeping guys at home. They're coming on the road and getting guys, and that's the difference right now. You look and the point's exactly right. You look at it, and in the last few years, you go, Alabama and Georgia, those guys, were getting the offensive line. It was those two schools, and you go, man, everybody else might get one or two here or there, but you just had to beat out Alabama and Georgia, and they couldn't get all of them, and even Clemson wasn't getting those guys. you look now and go, Texas A&M, they realize it. NIL, they're going to go get some offensive line. Texas has made it the ultimate priority in their program is to go sign offensive linemen and do it through NIL with the deals they've gotten.
Okay.
And so you start getting Texas taking 4 or 5 top guys a year, and now Miami with Mario Cristobal, a former offensive lineman that has put guys in the NFL at Oregon.
Yeah, Jason, hold those thoughts real quick. We're going to take a quick break and come back because you are on a roll and you're making the best case I've heard in recent memory. We'll be right back with more Sidelines on this Saturday.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4 City exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Brown back here with you. I want to say something. Keep up see your local grocer, whether it's Publix or Piggly Wiggly. Ask the manager, do y'all serve and have in stock Miss Rubin's rubs? If they don't, ask them to start carrying them and you'll be back. They can get it, though, Miss Rubin's rubs, online. You can go to Amazon or Walmart or go to misrubins.com. Black Magic, White Magic, Seafood Magic, and Creole Magic. Tell you what, I put them on everything that ever ran, flew, swam, or crawled, and they make them about 100 times better. This is a great way to make your food even better. Jason, you were laying out such a great case before the Supreme Court justices about the offensive linemen and the scarcity of them, not just in the South, but all over the country. And there are only a handful of schools that are really getting the top guys.
Yeah, and you're right. It's a limited supply. Jimmy talked about it, and you think about it, there's probably only 4 or 5 guys that are legitimately ready each year to play as a freshman in Power 5 football. I mean, you might have a guy that works his way into it, but it's the hardest position to come in and play right away. So you start narrowing that field down, and then you narrow down the field of Power 5 guys in general. And it's also a position where you're going to miss on guys because of development, because guys get bigger and stronger. And that's how guys from Central Michigan wind up being first-round draft picks and playing in the NFL for 15 years because the guy's a 6'5", 250-pound tight end, and he turns into a first-round left tackle. Those are always going to happen. But by and large, you look at the guys that you feel like these guys are ready to play right now. Guys are 1 or 2 year guys, and there's not many of them. And right now those guys are the top target when you start thinking about these programs, especially from an NIL standpoint.
Well, we have Jim Nagy, the executive director of the Senior Bowl, on with us a good bit on the show, and we're going to have him on here soon talking about going into the preseason. And they'll put a watch list of about 700 players around the country. And Jim's background is he's certainly got the street credibility. Almost 20 years in the NFL. He was with the Packers. They won a Super Bowl there. Won a couple of them at New England and the Patriots with Bill Belichick, and then with Pete Carroll and the Seahawks. And we asked him this question, where are the offensive linemen at the Senior Bowl last year? And he said, look, a lot of them are at the FCS, at the lower level schools, the smaller ones, the Sun Belt, places like that, because these kids will go and they will develop and they won't just transfer, after a week if they're not getting enough playing time. And that's what it takes. You look at how Nebraska stockpiled those great offensive linemen all those years. Yeah, they had some special scholarships for every county in the state. I think they got 2 or whatever, but that I've never seen it to where there's so few offensive linemen. We had Wesley Britt on the show yesterday, and he was an Auburn commitment for a long time. He ended up going to Alabama, played 5 years in the NFL. But how many guys like a Lee Zimba came out of Rogers, Arkansas, but had Auburn bloodlines in him? Ryan Pugh, whatever, out of Hoover. Where are those guys? I mean, Jimmy, jump in here, but if you want to go to Texas and get $50,000 to swell up like Junior Samples from Hee Haw eating pancakes, go for it. But I mean, it's not that easy. Even with that, Texas hadn't had in the last 15 years maybe one first-round offensive line pick. Clemson, the last 15 years, how many have they had, Jimmy? 5? I mean,
yeah, at the most. And when you talk about offensive line development, I mean, Alabama last year had what was considered by many recruiting experts the top offensive line recruiting class in recent history, and yet only one of those guys really played at all last year. J.C. Latham got some time in the playoff game against Cincinnati at left guard, and the other guys again spent the year just trying to learn the system. Alabama's got a complicated scheme, and with Auburn, I think it's even more difficult because you had a coaching change which involved a big difference between the scheme that Gus Malzahn used offensively than what Brian Harsin has used during his head coaching career. So you've got to deal with that adjustment. And then it just takes time to learn a different set of techniques that Harsin's staff wanted their offensive linemen to pick up and improve on, as opposed to what was used during the Gus years. So it's really complicated, and also for the person that's not involved in or is an insider to what's going on at all these different programs. It's just not a simple black and white solution to how to fix some of these problems, because as we've been talking about, offensive line is one of the toughest areas to be efficient in, because you have to have 5 guys that are working cohesively, and they all have probably played different positions before they came to college and have been converted. And so in many cases, they're just learning their new position. And on top of that, you're going up against very skilled players every time you face an SEC opponent. So, man, it's a lot of work for these players, and it's a lot of work for these coaching staffs.
Yeah. And Jason, I want to ask you, talk about the defensive line for Auburn. I know Auburn, obviously, and this has been going on for the last 5 years on the offensive line, but you got Colby Wooden, you got Derek Hall, Eku Leota. There's, some good guys on the defensive front. Not as much depth on the edge rushing as you need, but you've got some studs out there. But talk about guys like Zykevious Walker and some of the other ones, Marquise Harris, that you looked for, to step up in the 22 season.
Yeah, before we go there, I want to touch on something else real quick. But you mentioned about Alabama. If they've recruited as well as anybody on the offensive line in the last decade.
Yeah.
They put guys in the NFL. They've recruited as good as anybody or better than anybody probably. And still, last season was their issue, offensive line. They struggled on the offensive line.
Yeah.
They signed all those guys last year. And what do? They go into transfer portal and get a guy that's going to be a starter, Tyler Steen from Vanderbilt, to come in. So even with all the guys they had, you still have development problems because you're just going to miss on so many guys. So that's another point I wanted to make there. But Auburn's defensive line, I think from the 3 interior spots, what you would consider kind of the classic defensive line, they've got potentially as much depth as I can remember in quite a while. They got a lot of guys that look the part now. Will they go out and turn it loose and make those plays? You're right. The first group, Colby Wooden, Colby Wooden, Marcus Harris, and now Jason Jones. The Oregon transfer who's originally from Alabama, 6'6", 320. I think he's a guy that's going to be in the middle of the defense and kind of try to hold it down there. Those three guys, you got Marquise Burks back that's got experience, has played in the middle some. And then you look at Zykevis Walker, a guy that's a true junior that played a lot as a freshman that kind of dwindled down last year, but he's a guy that has the physical traits to go out there and do it. Jeffrey Imba coming in, the number one junior college defensive tackle in the country at 6'5", 310, 315, moves like a deer. I mean, like he has the physical traits to be an NFL player. Well, he kind of learn the nuances of the game, techniques and fundamentals that you have to have. That we'll see that, but he's got the physical tools to be really good. But Anisi Sledge from Louisiana coming in as a freshman, is a guy that's in there. I mean, they got some numbers. They got some guys that look the part. Now, what will it do? Can they provide actual depth behind those starters? That's kind of the key now for this season.
Hey, got a question from one of our listeners, Levon Helm, Turkey Scratch, Arkansas. I think that's Marvel, Phillips County. That name sounds familiar from the band. But anyway, what says Auburn's not really famous like Alabama has been in the last 15, 20 years for developing NFL players. Why should I be encouraged that Coach Brian Harsin is going to change that course?
Yeah, I mean, that's the key. We've been singing that for a few years now on the show, and the only thing you do is give them a shot. That's the only way to do it. They've got to go out, and get either get their opportunity to do it and it works, or you move on to the next guy. That's it. I do think some of the things they're doing, especially offensively, are more NFL variety, especially on the offensive line. Now, can you get the dudes to then develop into those NFL guys? Yeah. I think Killian Zaire is a guy that can be an NFL player on the offensive line this year. The other guys, you got experience. Keandre Jones will have a chance too. I think the other guys are probably, because of injuries and age, maybe are going to be tougher for an NFL team to jump on some of those other guys. But I think from an NFL standpoint, they're doing more NFL style things. Will Friend has put guys into the league before. The system is a little bit more NFL based, I think, than obviously Gus Malzahn's was. But even you look at like wide receiver, bringing in Ike Hilliard, the guy knows what it takes at the NFL level to get guys there, and knows what they're looking for. Now, do you have the guys that you can turn into those players? But right now, that's it. I mean, you look at, they've done some of those things on the defense. Whether it's been defensive line and in the secondary the last few years, they've put guys into the league there. Can you get the guys on offense to then turn into NFL players? That's the next step.
Yeah, and I think the takeaway, and we're about to wrap up, and I really appreciate you taking time to call in. Jason, you are so prepared. You, Mark Murphy, Philip March, the whole team inside the Auburn Tigers 24/7 Sports. You do it the right way, and I applaud you for that. And we're grateful, and everybody listening is, whether you're an Auburn fan or not, because you do your homework. I think the takeaway from this is there are not a lot of elite offensive linemen out there, not like it used to be. And Jimmy hinted on that. They're not the camps, it's not the development. It's all about the wide receivers and the skill positions. So if you've got an offensive line coach, and Will Friend, if he's able to connect with these guys and say, look, we may not be, the most talented group, but there's no reason we can't be the toughest, hardest working, get after your ass, group in America. I think that's what's going to separate it, because it does not sound like, you just look around the SEC. How many elite offensive linemen are there? Georgia had 5 draft picks taken in the first round this past year. All of them were on the defensive side. And Broderick Jones and guys like that Auburn's gone after really hard in recruiting. Are they going to be for? Who knows? But I've never seen the offensive line position so that's such a scarcity of elite players. But Jason, just leave us with some parting thoughts and tell people how they can follow you on all the social media and all. But your thoughts about, say, in the next week or so, what do you think Auburn might do in practice that you're looking forward to hear that gives you a lot of signs of encouragement, especially in the quarterback room?
Yeah, we'll get a chance to see. I think parts of about 4 or 5 more days here in the next week. So get a chance to kind of put our eyes on guys. That's where it's going to start in this one as quarterback. But there's some other things to watch. I think offensive line, how that shakes down because there's so many guys, how that position shakes down, and then development of some of these young guys, especially wide receiver. We talked about for years, how wide receiver play has to improve and bring in Ike Hilliard. You got a lot of new bodies there, but Coy Moore and Camden Brown, some of those guys, all those things to watch. We'll have photo galleries, videos, and more. Got some access again today, so check it out even today at E-Tigers and AuburnUndercover.com.
Hey, Jason, thank you so much for all your work. Have a great weekend. Look forward to having you on next week.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. I tell you what, Jimmy, you are so right. As Carl Stevens would say, you are so right. The offensive line camps, you got all these guys. It doesn't matter what the school, you've got them. I mean, we had Wesley Britt on yesterday. Could you imagine having Wesley Britt running an offensive line camp for young kids to go to? What is it? Is it culturally looked down upon to be a big guy now? We got lots of big guys. Man, I was in Walmart yesterday. Holy cow, they're riding around on scooters and golf carts. But I digress. Jimmy, I mean, Alabama, he's right. Last year, Alabama's offensive line class came in on paper as one of the best ever. And they still had to go out to find other people. But I think what it boils down to is it typically takes 2 or 3 years to develop them. And with the portal making it so easy to transfer, guys are not willing to put in the time, and they're thinking they can just, the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. Well, it might be, but I guarantee you it's got to be cut. There's still going to be issues no matter where you go, correct?
Yeah, and I think, too, when you look at getting a player out of the transfer portal, in the case of Tyler Steen, there's a really good chance you can get a guy who already has 3 years of starting experience in the SEC.
Right.
So if you're able to get a player with those kind of, I guess, bona fides, it makes it an easy decision to think that a guy's going to be able to adapt to your system very quickly. And again, I think when it comes to developing offensive linemen at an early age, that becomes kind of hard because a lot of these kids that have the size to be an offensive lineman at an early age, they might not be able to play youth football because they don't fit within the weight limits, and that's something I think that's kind of overlooked. And if you're too big and you're frozen out of playing youth football because you're too big,
there you go.
That kind of puts you behind the 8 ball too. So, again, there's just a lot of intangibles behind developing and finding, offensive linemen that can work together as a unit. But it's so important because we talk all the time about how quarterback is the most important position in college football, and it is.
Yeah.
But those guys cannot be effective if their offensive line isn't giving their quarterback time to throw the ball, because
Correct.
These defensive coordinators are coming up with more sophisticated schemes every year. And the latest now is these speed rushers giving these tackles problems, trying to, keep them off the quarterback. So, again, it's why college football is so fascinating, because you can use so many different schemes and the ideas that all these different coaches have are just it's fascinating where they come up with them. If it's just at coaches clinics or just brainstorming with old friends that coach at other schools, and they're just randomly discussing some of these strategies. So again, it's a never-ending puzzle that they're trying to put together.
Yeah, Jimmy, we're going to take a quick break, and that's a great analysis of it. And we're going to talk more about it on the Saturday Roundtable, Sidelines, College Football. Hello, Central Alabama. We'll be right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4 City exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Brown back here with you. Frank Duffy's supposed to be calling in. Let me just guess here, 8 o'clock Central from the balcony of his condo down in the French Quarter. Maybe he's still out on Bourbon Street, Jimmy. I don't know. But they're doing something fun down there.
Well, they might have an early parade.
That's good. It could be, or you could have the St. Aug 100 band coming by. I never know what we're going to get. But anyway, going back to this offensive line issue, the Miss Rubin's rub on the offensive line position is the weight limits. That's an issue. I mean, you're too big to play. So these kids there are other sports that they can take up lacrosse. They can take up, baseball is a year-round sport for a lot of guys. And look at a big guy like Austin Riley of the Atlanta Braves. I mean, I bet he was a pretty good football player in high school. And I think he was going to Mississippi State until the Braves signed him, but that's a big guy baseball guy. And baseball's always been there. But where are the Dave Remingtons and the Dan Krogers and the Dean Steinkuhlers and, in the SEC, your John and David Hannas and, Ed King out of Phoenix City, Willie Anderson. You think about some of these offensive linemen that have been in where are they? They're just, who's the next one to come up and be a star? You think about Braden Smith at Auburn. I think he started it in the fall of 2018 as a rookie with the Colts when he said, I came in as a 5-star recruit, but the offense we ran at Auburn in the 4 years I was there really didn't prepare me for life in the NFL. And I think that's used against Auburn, but they don't run the hurry up and the huddle anymore, folks, in case you hadn't noticed. And Gus really didn't run it the last few years after the substitution rules were changed. He might run it in the first 12 or 16 plays that were scripted, but after that they didn't. Other teams adjusted and made it tough. I just think, Jimmy, if you go out day in and day out and just instill a really tough culture with the offensive linemen and they're willing to be developed, you can be good. That's why I do think Auburn will surprise people this year with their offensive line. But, Matt Luke, when he was at Ole Miss, he recruited some talent. They didn't have a great offensive line, I didn't think, but they got better. Then you bring in Lane Kiffin, and they've had tremendous success. Look around the SEC. Look at Sam Pittman. There's a classic case at Arkansas. He's an offensive line coach. He's always been an offensive line coach. That's what he loves. And he is building the team from the line out at Arkansas. Offensive line, defensive line. And they take pride in being big and just, mowing people down. That's what they do. And you got to have that buy-in mentality. And I don't know if you took a look at the top 10 offensive line recruits right now and compared them to the top 10 offensive line recruits 10 years ago, they may be more savvy, having gone to more camps, and they may be more advanced with using social media or whatever, but I don't think they're any tougher. I don't think they're better. Look at that class again, the Brockemeyer twins at Alabama, Jimmy. How good? One was a 5, and I think one was a 4-star. Now, neither one of them dominated last year. Look at Georgia. Look at Florida. You're bringing Osiris Torrance from Louisiana Lafayette, transferred over with his coach Billy Napier to Florida. And, Dan Mullen didn't really like to recruit. This offensive line issue, folks, as much as we focus on the wide receivers, they are the prima donnas of the NFL. We don't need any more Antonio Browns. What we need are more hardworking, blue-collar ethic offensive linemen. That'll make the game better. Right now, everybody wants to have the great skill players. They're putting the cart before the horse. You got to build it from the line out, Jimmy.
Yeah, but even at Arkansas, and considering the fact that Sam Pittman obviously wants to establish a punishing ground attack, you still got to have the quarterback play that's going to make you a successful team. And that's exactly what happened with the season that KJ Jefferson had last year, because had he not proved his ability to throw the ball downfield vertically to stretch those defenses, you would have still seen those defensive coordinators, putting 8 guys in the box to outnumber your blockers to stuff that running game if they knew that the quarterback was not going to hurt them with the vertical passing game. So that's a critical area that you have to be good in nowadays, is the vertical passing game. And I think in a lot of ways, that's why when you see these preseason predictions on certain teams, almost all of those teams picked at the top are strong at quarterback.
Yeah.
Or even if, like last year, let's say at Alabama, you had somebody like Bryce Young that had not had much playing experience. And even coming into the season, Saban said they were really concerned because they were hoping to get him a lot more playing experience in 2020. But Mac Jones had such an unbelievable season, it was just hard to get him off the field. And so again, there's just so many things that you have to consider. Whereas 30, 40 years ago, when you had those steamroller offensive lines like Nebraska had in the early and mid 80s, the game was much simpler. I mean, it was just simple, straight ahead blocking schemes where you just got off the ball and you just knocked the guy lined up across from you back 5 yards.
Yeah.
Well, it's not that simple anymore. And those defenses aren't stationary as they were back then, where they didn't really move their players around much or changed alignments. Whereas every day now in the SEC, every week, you're going to see defenses move around. They're not going to be in the same alignment on any 2 plays in a row for the most part. So the offense, from the lineman to the quarterback to the receivers, lots of times they have to make reads on what their assignment's going to be after they leave the huddle. So it's a totally different game now.
Yeah, and look, we all know that typically if you got a right-handed quarterback, throws with his right arm, your left tackle is your most valuable offensive line spot. If it's a left-handed quarterback, that guy's going to be your right tackle. We get that. Now you throw in tight ends and all, and that's another issue. But the biggest thing that I see on the offensive line is your quarterback of the offensive line is going to be your center. And those usually are not some guy that was a 5-star or 4-star. The center is a guy who kind of just that's where he could play. They're not always the biggest. They're usually height-wise, they're the smallest. But they got to be the quarterback of the offensive line. They got to look up there when they get to the line of scrimmage, look for opportunities and see what the defense is lined up at. And then you look across the line of scrimmage and you see a pair of guys like Will Anderson Jr. and Dallas Turner. And as Takeo Spike said about, at media days about Will Anderson Jr., he goes, he's not like most people. He's not like most mortals. He gets up to the line and he sees 2 or 3 opportunities real quick. His mind is just looking left, right, back, forth. And he's going to exploit those. And it may not even involve him making a tackle, Jimmy. It's him taking the left side of the field away and forcing the team to run to the opposite side that they don't really want to run to. May not be their strong side. So you look at tackles. I think Will Anderson had 17 tackles last year. I've still never seen a season like 1986. Derek Thomas at Alabama, 27 sacks in a season. keep in mind, most schools, if you look at their all-time sack leader, in their career, 27 or 28 would be the career record at most SEC schools for sacks. But Will Anderson Jr., 17 last season, and he's getting double team, triple team. They're trying everything in the world to keep him out. But you're right. Your offensive linemen they got to be smart. They got to be big, but really they got to be tough. And what we're doing with the portal is really making it easy for guys to quit. I mean, they don't want to go in there and develop for the 2 or 3 years and be a starter as a fourth-year junior. They're not willing to do that. So they go from one school to the other, and they're being taught all these different techniques and ways of doing it. Then you got an offensive line full of guys that have been in the program for 2 or 3 years. I'm telling you what, that's Arkansas. It's Ole Miss is bringing in some guys, but they got a lot of guys that have been there. This Auburn offensive line is going to surprise people. You're going to be shocked. I think they're going to be pretty good, but it's next year. Like Jason Caldwell said, you got to go find some guys. Jimmy, let's look. I want to talk about Tennessee. Okay. Last year, Joe Milton starts out at the beginning of the season, quarterback. It's the same thing. He comes out of Pahokee, Florida, down there in the muck. Lake Okeechobee, goes to Michigan. First 6 or 7 games, he's the starter, and then he loses his job. He comes to Tennessee. Same thing last year. He gets beat out by Hendon Hooker, a transfer in the portal from Virginia Tech. And now Tennessee does have 2 quarterbacks. They've got Hendon Hooker and Joe Milton, but clearly Hendon Hooker's the starter. Tennessee, what's different about them, in my opinion, versus most hurry-up offenses is they can run the ball down your throat. They're not like a lot of the Big 12 teams that will throw the ball 50 or 60 times a game. They can dominate the line of scrimmage, but they also don't have to have – when they beat Kentucky on the road last year at night with 14 minutes and 47 seconds total time of possession, that really caught my eye. And that was a pretty good Kentucky team. But Kentucky is not in the same league yet with Georgia. So I'm still going to say after Georgia, Tennessee's the best team in the East. Florida, they've got more work to do, especially at quarterback. Anthony Richardson looks like a great talent. But, Jimmy, I'm putting my lot with Tennessee as the team that will push Georgia the hardest in the SEC East. Do you agree, disagree, or are you neutral on the subject? I know that's not true.
Well, I know Tennessee's going to be able to put a lot of points on the board, but the concern with them is still their defense.
Yeah.
And that's where they're really working the recruiting trail hard, because not only do you have to find the best defensive players possible, and as we mentioned earlier in the show, there's a lot of competition for those players, but you have to also develop depth. And even if you don't have the absolute top 50, 100 players in the country on your roster, if you do a good job of talent evaluation, lots of times if you're in the top 300 or 400 and those guys are maybe not as developed, but they have a lot of raw athletic ability and they can be coached and developed, then in many cases you got yourself a future star. And I think Tennessee really needs to really focus on trying to get as many guys as they can that you can see they have the ability, they got the skill level, but maybe they at the high school level they haven't been coached at learning the techniques that you have to do or have to be good at to be successful at the college level. And that's why, of course, in college football, that redshirting is a common theme. And what makes that an even better situation in regard to developing those types of players is that now you can let players participate in 4 games without losing a year of eligibility. And then in that, if you decide that those particular players aren't quite ready to contribute at a full-time level, and then they know what they need to work on, and then they still have 4 more years of eligibility. So I think with Tennessee, it's clearly the defensive side of the ball, and we all know that they were, I think, dead last, 130th out of 130 FBS teams in time of possession. But that's not a big deal if you can score on a 75-yard TD pass, on a moment's notice. When you're able to do things like that, psychologically, that can really have an effect on an opponent who had to bust their butt to drive 75 yards and take 15 plays in 7 minutes to do it, So I think Tennessee offensively, they're in great shape, having Hooker back and a number of skilled players because, they broke all kinds of school records offensively last year, and that was in Josh Heupel's first year. So that's why Tennessee fans are really excited for this season because in the modern college game, if you can put points on the board, you've got a chance to win because these offenses are rolling up so many points that now defensive coordinators, they don't have to feel that their unit has to hold an opponent to 15, 19, 21 points to win a game. If you can hold your opponent into the mid or upper 20s with the explosiveness of these offenses nowadays, you're going to win probably 10 games.
Yeah, that look at Ole Miss last year. They improved about 40% on their defense. Of course, the bar was pretty low. The 2020 Ole Miss defense was arguably one of the worst ever in Western civilization. But then last year, DJ Durkin, year 2, and then remember, coming into the 21 season of Ole Miss's 25 signees in that signing class, 14 of them were defensive players, and they all went through spring drills. That right there was the difference. And then you bring in Chance Campbell, a transfer from Maryland. That you've got to have the catalyst, and you've got to have the guys. If a junior college player or a transfer portal player isn't able to participate in your spring practice, and they just show up for the summer workouts, and a lot of times they only get there for half of them, or God forbid, they show up a couple of days before you start practice in August, their chances of contributing meaningful minutes to your team diminish greatly. And that's just how it works. You've got to have the process that you hear Nick Saban talk about. It's a model. You look at successful businesses. They have a process. They might use a matrix on how they decide what an employee needs to have. We need people, some that can do this, some that can do that. We'll put you in different divisions, but developing and building a football team, it takes a lot of work, but you got to have smart people that are very good at evaluating and reading the people that you bring in. We're going to take a quick break, be back for hour number 2 on this Saturday on Kicks 96 Central Alabama. Hello, everybody on Lake Martin.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Brown back here with you. Hour number 2. Jimmy, a little bit of confusion there. I was noticing you got the Central and the Eastern time zones. Frank Duffy in New Orleans, lives in Atlanta, but he's in New Orleans, supposed to be calling us from the balcony of his condo in the French Quarter at 8. And Buddy Martin had said what time. I said 10:15 Eastern, 9:15 Central. So I see what happened now. So they'll call in hopefully soon, but we got lots to talk about. You talked about Tennessee's defense. You look at these hurry up, no huddle offenses when your drives. I mean, LSU's 2019 national championship team, they had a lot of drives of 2 minutes or less. There were games when they did not have a drive more than 2 minutes. Some of those drives, 32 seconds. They gave up more points, LSU's defense did in 2019, than any LSU defense in the modern era of college football. Yet that was arguably the greatest college football team ever. That and the 95 Nebraska team that beat Florida 62-24 in the Fiesta Bowl for the national championship. But wow, what gives? You got an incredible offense that scores real fast. That keeps your defense out on the field more, so you're going to give up more points. But when you got an offense, what is it going to be that people can't stop? I mean, and then you've got a great program. Tennessee, you're right. Rodney Garner is an excellent defensive line coach. Leave it to him to figure out a way to slow people down. I don't doubt that, but you've got to have those elite defensive linemen. And there's usually about 7 or 8 schools in the country that have them. And most of them are in the SEC, Jimmy. Then you throw in Ohio State will get elite defensive linemen. Southern Cal used to, but they're not doing it anymore. And then teams will have an edge rusher here or there. And that's what they really have in the Big 12 is everybody, the most coveted defensive line position, front 7 in the Big 12 are the edge rushers because everybody throws the ball so much. The SEC last year threw the ball more than any other conference of the Power 5. Go back 10 years ago, that wasn't the case. It was much more of a running league. And Stat Tiger Stuart Carter, he'll be on with us next Saturday. We talked about this, and that it's this year he thinks we're going to see the most prolific offensive numbers we've ever seen in the SEC. Now, that being said, Georgia lost a lot on defense. They had 15 players drafted, 5 defensive players taken in the first round. Their defensive coordinator, Dan Lanning, is gone. He's now the head football coach at Oregon. Jimmy, if the SEC has this offensive season that Stat Tiger is talking about, the greatest numbers ever, does that mean there'll likely be a surprise team or 2 or 3 in there that maybe we're not talking a lot about? Or will it be the same 2, Georgia and Alabama?
Well, I've never seen a preseason poll at SEC Media Days that had, I think, Alabama with an 87% chance to win the SEC West, and I think Georgia was at 89%. So the perception is out there that there's not going to be a big change, but when you lose the number of players that Georgia did in the first round of the NFL draft defensively, I think it's going to take some time for those guys to get adjusted to playing against SEC game competition. But at the same time, I have a hard time remembering in recent times defending national champion and combining the fact they play in the SEC that has a friendlier looking schedule than Georgia does. I mean, you look at that schedule and right off the top, it's a tendency for everybody just to think, okay, that's probably a win or a loss. You're able to make that judgment right away. But you look at this Georgia schedule And until the SEC championship game, I just don't see one where I think, man, this could be an L for them. It just even with Oregon, I mean, you're starting with a new coach, Dan Lanning, probably a different system, just a completely different coaching staff, and they're coming to Mercedes-Benz Stadium to take on Georgia. I just don't see a good outcome there. And then after that, I mean, it just looks really smooth sailing for Georgia, But again, you never know. But when you see their schedule, it just seems like that gives them a great opportunity to develop these very skilled, athletic, highly recruited players, so that by the time they get to mid-season, they're really starting to get comfortable, playing at this level.
Well, I just think, Jimmy, the high-powered offenses, you better have a lot of depth on your defensive front seven, because if you don't, you're gonna be like Florida State. When Bobby Bowden got to Florida State, go back 76, really until about 84, 85, when they brought in Mickey Andrews, defensive coordinator. That's when Florida State changed. Prior to that, they would outscore people. And and even when they lost a game, like they did in 1984 to Auburn, the greatest game never on TV, 42-41, everybody talked about, man, what an exciting game that was. But then when they got the defense shored up, starting with the 1987 season, 1987 to 2000, that 14-year run, Florida State never finished lower than number 4 in the final rankings, okay? That's amazing. Mickey Andrews, what he meant to them. And Bobby Bowden left, after the 2009 or 10 season. But they were, when they lost Mark Richt, and prior to that, they also lost Chuck Amato, who went to NC State. And Mark Richt went to Georgia starting with the 2001 season. That really began the, Florida State football began to slip a little bit. And then Jimbo came in, got him rolling. He had Jameis Winston. Who couldn't win with that guy? But go back and look. All things are cyclical. Georgia, in the 15 years Mark Richt was there, won about 150 games. But they weren't getting over the hump. They did it this past year because they had a great defense. And they've got a good quarterback. Look, what's a quarterback supposed to do? The problem with people is they look at a quarterback and they expect them to be 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", just, like John Elway, Peyton Manning. They don't all look like that. I mean, Stetson Bennett the fourth might be 5'10", 5'11" with his helmet and his cleats. Doesn't matter. What's a quarterback supposed to do? Put you in a position to win, not lose the game for you. When there's opportunities there, he gets the ball in the hands of the playmakers. And even with all that, there's still a lot of Georgia fans that want someone else to be the quarterback because they are stuck on stupid. They're remembering these kids that came out of high school like Carson Beck or whoever it is, 4-star, 5-star. Well, we got to keep them happy. No, you don't. You don't coddle these guys. And that's the problem, is when coaches feel like they've got to put in special offensive sets and packages to keep Junior from having a pout fit on the sidelines. All that does is detract from the chemistry of the team. And if I'm the coach, I'm telling that guy, look, let me make some calls for you. And I'll put you in the portal. You don't have to do it. I'll do it for you, Jimmy.
Yeah, I mean, quarterback is a position where, players don't tend to stay around long if they see that they're going to be out of the mix as far as having a chance to get a significant playing time over the first couple of years. And, every head coach in the country realizes that, and they just know that's where things are now in the college game. So, you just adjust accordingly. But, Georgia fans are notorious for finding things to worry about. And,
no way.
There was,
they get that from Munson. Larry
there
Munson.
was
my.
There was a lot of whining after the spring game when, Stetson Bennett didn't have a great game and all of that. But, we've seen players struggle in spring games. And then when a fall camp came around and then the beginning of the season, those guys were were just fine. But I think Kirby Smart sent a pretty clear message about who Georgia's quarterback was when Stetson Bennett was one of the three players that they brought with them to SEC Media Day. So, again, I just think for them it's a matter of just getting these young players that haven't had a lot of game experience up to this point in their careers on the field and just actually learning the ropes, playing an actual game at this level, at least for, a full 60 minutes, not just snippets during a game after they've already got the win clinched, and they're just out there to try to get a few mop-up downs. So again, nowadays with the NIL and the transfer portal playing such a big part in how rosters change from year to year, not to mention the natural evolution determined by players that have used up their eligibility, or the elite players that leave early to go to the NFL draft. It's harder than ever to predict before teams actually start playing for real, how things are going to work out.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody felt like Georgia was going to have that kind of a defense last year. They just got better with every game. You look at a guy like Jordan Davis, just a monster, 6'7", whatever, 340 pounds on the defensive line. He may have played 35% of the snaps in a typical game. He was just trying to put teams in third and long. And he, remember, he came out of Charlotte as a 3-star, more of a basketball guy. That's what he loved. And he was a first-round draft pick, so he must love football. He better love football. He won't be there very long, but he's going to have a lot of money either way. You look at just around this conference. I'll tell you another school. Want to ask you about, and it's Mississippi State. Mike Leach, he showed up at the Touchdown Club in Memphis Monday night. A friend of mine called me. He was wearing cargo shorts and tennis shoes and just kind of laid back. Good. That's good for him. Took pictures with everybody. I mean, he just does it his way. He's funny, but he's got to win. And, yeah, it does matter what you do in a bowl game. When you go out and get embarrassed like they did against Texas Tech, and everybody built that up as a big rematch of the school that he left. That was a bad situation out there at the end, but he had great success at Texas Tech. And Mississippi State just didn't show up. Yeah, they had, again, this is why I hate these guys that quit on the team in the bowl game. Don't give me the term opt out. Call it what it is. They quit, And I mean, again, let's go back to my analogy. Okay. You're worried about getting hurt. Okay. Well, what if fans worried about getting hurt driving to the games or walking to the games? Scared man ain't never won a fight. Scared money don't make money. That's Buddy Martin's t-shirt. But I mean, I'm just curious, Jimmy, with Mississippi State, Mike Leach, they might throw the ball 60 times in a game, average about 5 yards a throw. That's a de facto running game, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those things in regard to bowl games. It's just a different scenario now. Unless you're in a playoff game, and that's why I think it's so important to expand the playoff to 12 teams, because it increases the number of games that really means something. And even better, hopefully the bowl locations will be involved in these first round games. I'm guessing they start with 12 teams. You'll have the top 4 seeds that will have byes, and then you'll have the remaining 8 teams that will play 4 quarterfinal games, and then those 4 winners will play the 4 teams that had the byes, and then you go from there. And that way you're not going to have at least the major bowl games that are going to have opt-outs, because if anybody decides they're going to opt out of a college playoff game. If I'm an NFL organization, I don't want any part of that guy.
Yeah, Buddy
so
Martin.
That's going to eliminate a lot of that problem.
Yeah, and Jimmy, great point. And Buddy Martin's on with us right now. And I was going to say, you talk to NFL executives, on all levels, GMs, owners, coaches, whatever. I want to see the numbers. We don't have enough data, really, enough years, history to track it and for it to really mean a whole lot, I think, at this point. But I'd like to see, since guys started quitting on their teams, don't call it opt-out, they quit, okay? You quit, man walks out on his family, he quits on them, okay? He's a loser, okay? Same thing with your team. Don't try to sugarcoat that. I don't want to hear it. You quit. So I want to see, because NFL coaches, they don't want that. They're looking at you because there's so much that goes into taking a guy in the draft. You got to stick through tough times, man. When you're married, you got 3 or 4 kids, you got responsibilities. Same thing. Those are lessons that you learn on the team. And so, you know what? If you're hurt, I get that. But, the fans, hey, unless you're going to make the tickets free and you're going to pay for the fans gas and hotels and their meals, don't go to a game as a team without the intention of winning. And I lost track of the number of times that Gus Malzahn would say, this is a business trip. We're going down there to the bowl game to get butter. To get butter? I mean, go get butter at the grocery store. Go get a win, Buddy Martin, the coach. Remember the coach and the reindeer and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer comes up there. All right, everybody, huddle up. Let's go. Love having you on here, Buddy Martin. True Grit Journalism is alive and well. Everybody get ready. Get a notepad, paper, pencil, whatever. Take notes. This is a journalist. This is Plato, Socrates, Aristotle. Listen and learn. Buddy, thanks for joining us.
I must have the wrong number here. Something, I don't know. Yeah, good morning. It's a lot on a Saturday. I just was on with my friend Terry Bradshaw just now and just, concerned about him right now. And he's doing okay, but he had a tough couple of days. And when you text me, I was just
sorry about that. Yeah. I hope everything gets better.
Terry, so.
Yeah.
I was say a prayer for him. All right. So he's been through some tough treatment this summer, and I'm hopeful. In fact, he was on his way to see a doctor when I called him. So
all right, stand by these thoughts. We're going to call right back after this quick break.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Brown back here with you. Buddy Martin, Jimmy Hodge, Rob Brown here with you. Say hello to everybody listening on Kicks 96.3, Central Alabama, Alexander City, all over the place, Lake Martin, everybody out there, Sylacauga, the Marble City. I appreciate you listening. Also go to 680thefan.com, the podcast park. We're there Monday through Saturday. Right after this, if you miss us live, you can hear it there. And to follow us on Twitter at Sidelines_live. Buddy, you were talking about your good friend Terry Bradshaw, 4 Super Bowls. We all remember that, but he's a good man and a great friend of yours, and had to go to the break. So if you could pick up, and we will all keep him in our prayers for sure.
Yeah, I don't want to get into it too deep. Just other say a prayer for Terry. He's been undergoing treatments all year. So just pray that he can deal with his pain right now. And we'll see how things go. So
I
don't want to put his personal business out there.
Absolutely.
But, I love him like a brother. I've known him for 35 years, and he's a special person to me and my family. And anytime something's wrong with him, it's like someone in my family. So just say a prayer for him. You made a comment earlier. I don't know where you're going with it, but I'm going to disagree with you because how I remember, and I don't cover the NFL anymore. I've been to a game in 2 or 3 years, and I really have narrowed my focus down to college football and college sports. And I don't want to say football because I had a tremendous interview with Talisa Diggs, the national champion, SEC champion in the 400, and who was on the national championship gear track team, who was one of the brightest, sharpest young women I've ever been around. On Thursday, Ben Trupana in France, and Laura Meadows had her on. I'm talking about a star. She's 19 years old. She sparkles like Oprah. She's just brilliant, and she's a great great ambassador for the Florida Gators. So it's a total package. And when someone like that comes along, it kind of makes you kind of wash away the sins of the other things that go on, the nastiness of college football or whatever it might be. Every now and then, she really just impressed me so much. I thought, this is college athletics. This is a young woman who was a national champion at 19 and indoor, outdoor, and member of the national champion relay team and national champion Gator team, who could very well be sitting on the studio with Robin Roberts one day or whoever, and sparkling like a star that she is. She's sharp. She's great. Her granddaddy was the principal of the school in New Jersey where the movie was made. Lean on Me about him.
Joe
If you
Clark.
remember that movie?
Joe Clark.
Yeah, Joe Clark.
Yeah.
Right. That's her grandfather.
Wow.
And both of her parents ran track. And her whole family's full of stars. And she's a star. She's about to explode into one. She already is. So that gives me hope, and that gives me strength. It gives me, I think, man, she gets it right. She got it right. Hoorah! I want to stand up and cheer for Talisa Diggs. What a great young person she is. So just for a moment, I put aside all the things about NIL and all the things about the transfer portal and all the things. This cliff that we're on looks like we're running hanging like one of those pictures of a car just on a cliff and is just hanging on by the wheels. The college football looks like sometimes.
Yeah.
And think, you know what? That's what it is. But there's always that one really redeeming story, which I love. And for me, last week, it was Talisa Diggs. However, having said that, I'm going back to one thing. I don't agree with you about the pro NFL teams. It's a whole different game now. And the sad reality is that they will do a deal with the devil it's like damn Yankees if it helps them win. And some guy, Deshaun Watson shouldn't be allowed near an NFL team right now.
Correct.
But you know what? He will be because they'll take anybody help him win. That's all that matters. Doesn't matter what their character was. So the old days of character and all that crap, whatever, it just doesn't apply. It's about the Benjamins in the NFL. Okay, that's the game they play. And now, of course, in college football, we'll see if that's what the danger is when we talk about it. I'm guilty. I was one who 30 years ago said, make it more like the NFL, have the playoff. But the problem is, if you do, you now inherit the problems that are like they have in the NFL. Yeah. And you're hopeful there's a little bit of amateurism left. And whether or not this scorched earth can survive, and that maybe the values that we all like to believe in are not completely lost. So I don't agree with you on it. Look, if the Honey Badger can help them win, whoever, they're gonna take him. And he's gonna play, and that's all it's about. It's all that matters. And unfortunately, Al Davis, who I thought was a nemesis. I never liked him, never respected him. I never thought he stood for the right things in the NFL. He's right. It's all about just win, baby.
Yeah, and look, character, it does matter. But I see what you're saying. I just know when we talked to Jim Nagy, the executive director of the Senior Bowl, he thinks it does, and I do. I think for a kid.
But wait. Your character matters where? Yeah, of course it always matters, and true character will come out. But to say that players that won't get drafted because they quit and didn't play in the bowl after that, I don't think it's true.
No,
I don't think it's going to happen.
No, I'm not saying anybody has said they wouldn't get drafted. I'm just saying that is taken into account. All that's taken into account. How you are with your team. They're going to ask. You ask anybody that's ever met Bill Belichick. He'll ask questions about how you treat the janitors, the people in the lunchroom, how you treat your girlfriend. Do you go to class? What do you do when things go crazy? That's the kind of stuff I'm really talking about. And I know. I mean, Antonio Brown is obnoxious and big of a pill as he is. Somebody will pick that guy up. And personally, I think he ought to be in the nervous hospital, when he took his shirt off and stormed off the field. But somebody will take him. But what's happening is the NFL is just playing kick the can with Antonio Brown. Eventually, he's not going to be able to play anymore. And he's going to have to go out in the real world. And good luck to you, son. He's
got money. He got plenty of money. You don't have to worry about that.
Yeah,
he's loaded.
I'm sure he's got it all saved and invested in a laddered bond portfolio.
Well, he needs to talk to Rob Brown.
Yeah, that's my point, buddy. Look, I was not arguing with you. But I'm going to tell you something. Aletha Diggs, is that the name correct?
Talitha, the biblical name.
Talitha Diggs.
T-A-L-I-T.
Yeah, Talitha Diggs.
Yeah.
God love her, because we need those stories in college athletics, and there's a lot of them. Guys like Owen Papo at Auburn, man, Stetson Bennett IV down at Georgia. And now you had Osiris Torrance on big offensive lineman. Hey, how about the hot sauce, Jimmy? You and everybody listening.
Well, hey, wait a minute, I got a bullet update on that. I just got the hot sauce. I asked him in the press conference last week.
I want to hear
because
this.
he's a Louisiana boy, and we interviewed him about 2 months ago. And I asked him what he missed about Louisiana, and one of the things was the hot sauce.
Yeah.
So we put together. My friend Terry Bradshaw, I told him about it. He said, "You tell him I'll get some hot sauce." Okay. So unfortunately, Terry got ill under the weather and couldn't get it. And one reason he called me just now, other than the personal thing, was to say, "I got the hot sauce for Osiris, as I'm gonna send it to him." So we were going to do a deal through the NIL, make it all proper, give him plenty of hot sauce he can have with his meals. And so Osiris is, by the way, as one of his coaches said in the press conference, is a great human being. That was how he described it.
Yeah.
And he's also never allowed a sack in his career in college. I think he could never work as Publix because he don't allow sacks.
Oh God, buddy, look, everybody listening. Buddy, we're on Kicks 96.3 Central Alabama on Saturdays now. Country music format, great American station, part of Lee Perryman and the Radio Alabama group, and a lot of people listening between Birmingham, Montgomery, Lake Martin, and everywhere in between. Alexander City, Alex City, as we call it, going down to Auburn. But I want to say that.
Hey, wait a minute. Let me claim my roots right there now. That's where my granddaddy and some of my folks were from. And you go down to Floral, Alabama down there, and you look at the First Baptist Church, the pastor was Wiley Francis Martin for 30 years.
There you go.
That's my great granddaddy. Okay.
I love it.
And they lived in and they lived in a little town called Green Bay. They ain't there no more. So I got some roots down there in Alabama. Okay.
You did.
And my grandfather was even born there. So there you go.
Yeah. No. Look, this show's about history, tradition, and heroes. And, I just think about the good stories. I mean, Will Anderson Jr. at Alabama. What Jimmy, what's he got? 5 older sisters? Listen, I got 2 older sisters, and they still treat me like little brother. And he's got 5, but Jimmy, isn't Will Anderson Jr. one of the good stories in college football? Not just because he's a hell of a player, but he seems like a stand-up guy. I don't know if he was an Eagle Scout or not, but he just seems like he's got his act together. And I think he's going to go way, way further than just an NFL career.
Yeah, I think he's the youngest, and the other siblings are all girls, and I think they took advantage of their seniority as he was growing up. So they've always kept him pretty humble by all accounts, including the the parents, and they'll talk about the past couple of years where he's had tremendous success, and they'll be the first to point out particular plays that didn't go well, and they'll say, yeah, we looked at a replay of the game, and yeah, you look kind of lost out there, or you're a little bit slow there, and that type of thing. So I think that's really motivated him, so that he's understood that you've got to deal with constructive criticism, and that every play is not going to go great. And I think that's a big part of being successful at this level, is that if you had a play that didn't go the way you wanted, you've got to be able to bounce back from it and move on to the next one.
Yeah. Hey, look, buddy, we're getting really close. I mean, practice has started. The Gators are getting going. Everybody's, every day, what are you drawing from 15 or 20 minutes of stretching? I mean, we don't really know a whole lot, but you've interviewed on the Buddy Martin Show, folks, and everybody listening, do yourselves a favor. Monday through Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. That's 8 p.m. Central on this side of the Chattahoochee. Do yourselves a favor. Go to Facebook.com, Twitter, Buddy Martin Show. Buddy is talking some of the best people in sports. He and the Iron Duke, Franz Beard, Ben Troop, interviewing Gator players, but also talking with some of the top media people in the country. You're talking with a guy, you're listening to a guy right now, folks, 50 plus years, former sports editor of the New York Daily News, the Denver Post, St. Petersburg Times. Listen, it's all about these relationships and the cool stories, but been there, done that. And where do you think we're going, buddy? Let's look at this 22 college football season. Billy Napier, you can't help but like him. And I read some stuff last night about Billy Napier's notebook. He takes notes of everything that happens every day. And a year later, he goes back and he does the comparable, note comparison, so they don't do something that they did a year before that could hurt the program. That's serious details. And that's what Florida needs. Now it's going out and recruiting. Is this message getting out all over 23 million people in the state of Florida the way you think it needs to be getting out?
No, I don't think it is. It takes a while. I wrote a column about it this week. Actually, I told a lie in the column. I made a mistake, but I said I had seen 11 head coaches be introduced to Florida since the late 50s. Turns out I lied. I remembered that when I was in New York City, I didn't make it to the press conference when Charlie Pell came. And therefore, and I wasn't there for Galen Hall because he never was introduced. He just inherited his interim. So there was none there, but every other one I was there. And I tried to measure it against what I've seen and heard all those years. And I pointed out there were three guys that really made an impact on me. Ray Graves in 1960. You have to understand, Florida's offense was beyond bad under Bob Woodruff. I mean, literally, they punted on third down. And it was awful. So he was fired, and Ray Graves, who worked for Bobby Dodd as a defensive coordinator, came to Florida. He brought a guy named Pepper Rogers, over Tech quarterback. Yeah. And they put in the wing T, or whatever you want to call it, flanker, and they went out and they won 9 games that year. And by the way, one of the biggest victories ever was beating Georgia Tech, which was huge in those days. So Ray Graves had an impact, and he was there 10 years, and he signed a guy named Steve Spurrier. So that was an impactful moment for all of us Gator fans who were sick and tired of watching Bob Woodruff's Tennessee-style football driving the ground. And then the next one that hit us, we were impressed with, was Steve Spurrier himself. How could you not love a guy? By the way, the Florida program was just on the doorstep of the death penalty by the NCAA. They had over 100 violations under Charlie Pell. All right? Charlie Pell, Alabama, yeah. I like Charlie Pell. Charlie Pell did a lot of great things. He may have been one of the top 5 influencers, what he did at Florida, built the infrastructure, whatever. But he also cheated and got caught. So along came Steve Spurrier to the rescue. Beyond what anybody could have thought, he promised to, A, get rid of the AstroTurf on the field, B, put Miami back on the schedule, C, bring back the blue jerseys, and, of course, win. He did all that. And the next one, I felt a connection with Steve. I knew him a long time. Then the next one I felt connection to was a guy named Urban Meyer. When he came there was something about that press conference that later we talked about it. I felt an immediate connection with that guy. I thought he was going to be a heck of a coach. And we talked later about our connection. So there's three guys. Now, here comes Billy Napier. I want him to be everything he can be. I want him to be like the greatest coach that Florida ever had. There's so many reasons why, because he does it the absolute right way. He's a really good person. He's paid his dues. He's brilliant in detail. What he has organized, you could do a whole series of books on his organization, how he's done this. I mean, it's incredible. 9 phases he's got through with his team. 9 different phases, including identity, which is carry around a roster of your teammates and let me know where they're from, like a fraternity in the whole town. On and on and on. The way he has brought them, an army, literally an army. I think it might be well into now the 70s number of support people they've got on that squad. Nutritionists. I mean, there's nothing they haven't covered. Their program, Mark Hockey, their strength conditioning coach, who's a master of all the homilies and the anecdotes and things about life. His quote was, "You can't train gladiators by pillow fighting."
Yeah, buddy,
how good is that?
Yeah, buddy, hold those thoughts because we're going to take a quick break, and we've got some questions from some listeners after this. We'll be right back with more Buddy Martin and Jimmy Hodge, Rob Brown on Sidelines.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
Buddy, you're making some great points before we went into the break about the organizational skills of Billy Napier. And then this is got a text here from one of our listeners, Dwayne Allman, Macon, Georgia. Man, that's pretty cool. Dwayne says, ask Buddy to talk about breaking that big story on Florida football in 1969. So you've been doing this a while. That's a really cool story.
Wow. Yeah, I was just.
I don't know what that noise is in the background. Sounds like somebody's.
That's me.
Oh, sorry.
I
sorry.
messed up. Yeah, that's me. I hit the link, so just take me off of there.
Okay.
All right.
All right, but
yeah, I'll answer that question. Yeah.
Because that was a really amazing story in 1969 with Florida football, and Franz got into it yesterday, talking about all the things that led up to it, and but you broke the story, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, let me tell you that story because it's a pretty good one. I'm going to turn this off, and I've got somehow on both your link and show. I'm trying to get off. Sorry, Audrey.
Okay.
All right, so here's the deal.
Yeah.
I was very much a part of that story, more than I wanted to be. And it'll take me about a minute to set it up, okay? And it's really this whole thing started back when Ray Graves began to make noises about leaving. But he had signed up for 1969 as the head coach. and we began to hear rumors that he might be leaving. And we tracked him down, and right down, it wound up. They didn't think he had much of a team that year, 1969, but there was a guy named Carlos Alvarez and a quarterback named John Reeves. They came out of the chute in the opening game against Houston. By the way, picked number 1 by Playboy. I don't know why, but and they threw a touchdown pass on the third play, and they become the Super Sophs, and they beat Houston that day. The unbelievable win for them. They went on to win 9 games that year, and the best record they ever had at Florida. But what we didn't know was Ray Graves had made a commitment to step up to athletic director after the season was over. Well, he just had the greatest season since 1928, 27, the year Florida won, almost went to the Rose Bowl. And here he was about to be booted upstairs. I went over it. I'm going to shorten this up. I went to training camp. Who did they end up playing? They ended up playing in the bowl game, Gator Bowl, against Tennessee and Doug Dickey, a former Gator player who had just won the SEC, and beat them 14-13. But before that, in practice, I took my little microphone, my cassette micro recorder, and asked Ray Graves, "Are you going to be the coach next year?" And he said yes. The Q&A. Well, I sent that out to a bunch of people, and then he says he's going to be the coach. What I didn't know was he made a backroom deal, and that he would step up. And when the season was over, they moved him up. The next guy in line that everybody wanted was Gene Ellison, beloved defensive coordinator. He didn't get the job. The president and one of the people in Tallahassee in the legislature made a deal with Dickey. Dickey came in and became the head coach. I was in Miami for the Orange Bowl. I called Carlos Alvarez, who was from Miami, and I went to breakfast with him and said, "What's the deal?" He was so upset. I said, "You think you might transfer?" He said, "Yes." I had a national story on a guy who was he was a consensus All-America as a sophomore. Yeah. Remember, freshmen didn't play. The first guy who ever did that since Doak Walker, Carlos Alvarez. And that story broke the next day. Went out on the national wire. Carlos Alvarez, I may transfer. You didn't transfer back in those days.
Yeah.
You just didn't do it. So it was a big story. And of course, that's the story on the headline that day. I sent the story to Gainesville. They ran it there. And when Doug Dickey became the head coach of Florida, that's what greeted him. And unfortunately for Doug, who, by the way, is a good man, but he got caught in a trap there, and he got victimized by his own misjudgment and the greedy politicians that wanted to be heroes. I was called, by the way, I went to an NCAA seminar. I met Walter Byers. I went to his room. I said, "Tell me what this violates." He said, "It's an ethical violation. It's in it right here in the book on page so-and-so." He looked at it. He says, "Send me all the articles that you wrote." I went home. I said, "I can't do this. I'm not going to try to turn on Florida or turn them in, whatever." I went to Washington, D.C. for the Final Four. I ran into Walter Byers in the hotel. He said, "Send me the articles." He said, "They're all public record anyway." I went home. I said, "Okay, I'll send it in." I sent the articles in. Lo and behold, he told me they were going to go put me before the ethics committee. There was going to be an NCAA investigation. He wrote me a letter, and I put it in my middle drawer and said, "What do I do now? I don't want this. I don't want to be a part of this, but I am part of it." So I put it in my middle drawer, and I pulled it out about a week later. And my friend Van McKenzie, the great sports editor, who I raised from a puppy, looked at me and said, "You got to write that story." I said, I know I do. So I wrote, "Florida is under investigation, NCAA." Everybody said nobody believed it. Nobody in the media believed it. I had a letter in my hand from Walter Byers. I knew it was true. The president of the university, Stephen O'Connell, whose dome was named after, came out and interviewed and said, "Buddy Martin's a liar. He didn't know what he's talking about." I thought, wait a minute, I got this letter. I ain't no liar, So that's what broke loose. So anyway, they had the investigation. There weren't enough players to come forward to tell the story of what went on, and they didn't find him guilty of any infractions. And Stephen O'Connell came out and said, "Yeah, we're right. The NCAA sanctioned what we did. They approved of how we handled it." And I called Walter Byers and said, "I can't believe this guy's getting away with this." So the next day, Byers came out with a story, and Kansas City said, just because we didn't find any evidence of Florida being guilty doesn't mean they were right in how they handled it. I wrote him back a three-word letter that Walter Byers lives. So that's the story Francis is talking about.
Okay. Well, I tell you, it's interesting, and there are a lot of stories over time. But the NCAA, they don't have subpoena power. They get everybody on basically circumstantial evidence. It's like trying to get a murder conviction without a body. Very difficult, from what I've always been told by people that do that for a living. Looking at it, Jimmy, along the lines of what Buddy just said, that was that. I remember when Doug Dickey became the AD at Tennessee. I mean, there were always people talking about that kind of fueled the Florida-Tennessee rivalry. And when they started playing again back in 1992, you always heard about it. But you broke that story. And anyway, great question from Dwayne Allman from Macon, Georgia.
Yeah. Hello, Dwayne. How are you? I got good friends from Macon. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah. Sweet Melissa. my wife, Audrey, says, I hear that song by the Allman Brothers. It's just na 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 na. Sweet Melissa. That's all she can remember.
A lot of good Southern rock out of Macon right there for sure.
Absolutely. And another one of our listeners, Artemis Pyle, who was a frequent listener, made a point about what you were saying with Florida, with these coaches. Charlie Pell. When we had Ward Pell on the show, his wife, talking about what happened when they got to Florida and getting Ben Hill Griffin involved. And, you can just look around, look what that did. It got everybody in the state, what I call a populist grassroots movement. And Jimmy, you remember when Coach Bryant would say, if Florida ever gets their act together, we'll all be fighting for second. The one thing with Florida I see, Jimmy, and this is, kind of throwing it at you to throw back to Buddy Bo, is it's the consistency part. From 1989 to 2009, Florida had the best record in college football, 7 or 8 SEC titles, 3 national championships. That's a pretty good run. And then now look in the last 4 coaches, Urban Meyer ended, and then you've got Old Yeller, McElwain, you got Muschamp, McElwain, and Mullen, and now Billy Napier. It's just, Jimmy, I guess I'm saying is, you got everything in the world going for you at Florida. You got everything in the world going for you at Southern Cal. How do you not win consistently 11 or 12 games a year?
Well, again, McElwain just totally botched the quarterback situation. I mean, that first year with Will Greer, they're 6-0. He tests positive for PEDs, and again, I'm just still puzzled as to why he was so anxious to run the kid out of town, because he was an outstanding player, and it looked like he was going to give them a minimum of 3 years if he ended up getting drafted in the NFL, but 4 years of outstanding offense, and McElwain would still be the coach in my mind. So that was a big part. But Buddy, I also wanted to piggyback on what you talked about by saying that the Tennessee-Florida rivalry really escalated after the 1984 season, when Charlie Pell, I think he resigned 2 or 3 games into the season. Galen Hall took over as interim coach, and Florida just went on a tear. They won their first official SEC football championship, and then 8 or 9 months later at the SEC meetings, Roy Kramer and Doug Dickey kind of pulled a smoke-filled backroom political deal almost, in which they orchestrated a movement to have Florida's championship taken away from them, and that succeeded. And as you mentioned many times, the only schools that voted in Florida's favor were Alabama and Auburn, and that really escalated the Florida Tennessee series, and I think it still remains pretty poisonous in a lot of ways to this very day.
You're right. And the other thing about it is, I did this many years ago, one of the books I wrote on Florida football back in, 2000, I don't even remember the year, 97, I guess it was. the connection between Tennessee and Florida over the years. Bob Woodruff had played for General Robert Namath, and he was the coach at Florida. And Bob Woodruff became Tennessee's athletic director. And Doug Dickey played for Bob Woodruff. And Doug Dickey became the Tennessee Florida athlete. I mean, there's been underground railroads in Knoxville and Gainesville all these years. There's a lot of DNA on both sides.
Yeah.
And they don't like each other. Florida's gotten the better of things by far, as you know. But I want to say, let me give credit where it's due. Woodruff, for all his utter stupidity, making a comment one time when he ran the clock out in the tied game at midfield against Rice. That's what finally got him fired. And he said, I'll gamble to win, but never to lose. Figure that one out, will you? But he was a brilliant administrator, and he knew how to put deals together. You know, there was one of the things, big story was back in the 50s was when they got these pari-mutuels, dog racing and highlight, to have a day every year for the University of Florida's athletic program. He made it an independent. He made it independent from the school, separate corporation. And it was a story in one of the Look magazine or Life magazine. Every time a Greyhound runs at Florida across the finish line, he helps Florida's football program. But ultimately, they had to give that to all the schools, not just Florida, back in the day. So yeah, but there, and of course, the other connection was Steve Spurrier, turned down Tennessee to come play at Florida because he didn't want to run the single wing. Bowden White ran a single wing, and he didn't want to do that. He comes here, becomes the most famous player in Florida football history, and owns Tennessee as a coach, basically. So there's so many rivalries. Now, these are lines, Jimmy, that get blurred, and I'm afraid will be ultimately forgotten with what we're doing now in college football. I'm not down on college football. I still say it's a great game, and it will turn around, and the free market will straighten it out. But right now, like I said, it's like that car on the edge of the cliff hanging by its wheels. College football is really is in jeopardy right now, and lots of things could go wrong or are going wrong, including the value system. One thing about Billy Napier I'll say is he is for the good of the game, and he is good for the game. We need more Billy Napiers out in this world who are not just for themselves, but also for the program. He said this week, look, I came from a family of coaches. I lived in my dad's hip pocket as a coach. You know the story about how he coached on wheelchairs last 2 years, never complained. His brothers are high school coaches. And Billy's comment was, if she wanted to, my sister could coach.
I like that, buddy. You know, you're talking about a guy, Billy Napier, who he's getting paid well. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we know, everybody knows that, but he loves what he does, and he loves the people, and he brings in people that want to believe and they buy into what he's all about. That's the difference.
And he also gave us a new word. Do you hear about that?
No.
Oh yeah. He challenged the media. He said, okay, I want you to look up this word, propinquity. I'll give you 30 seconds. Can you tell me what it is?
Propinquity? Well,
propinquity.
Something about a tendency to do something, isn't it?
Not really. That's propensity, I think.
Yeah, I know. So I was just thinking maybe, remember Norm Crosby, the guy that couldn't get the words right?
I loved it. It was great, yeah.
We got about a minute left, but you got to tell us the answer.
All right. Anyway, this is what I was telling the story about. I wrote a column about is his whole day, and I called him out a little bit. Now, you can't use that term "dogs" around here. That's the term. He grew up in North Georgia. He said something about the dogs. You can't do that. And I also pointed out that yes, we get propinquity, but which means near to, close to. Nearness or something, and I'm not going to read the little definition, but this has to do with being in proximity to, close to. He wants his players to be close to each other. He wants propinquity, and that's the word he used for the day. And so we'll see. I like that he's got media challenges, media people.
Yeah.
He's got to learn to deal with them a little better, though, because he admitted in his press conference, this whole new thing with the Florida media is new to me.
Yeah.
This whole thing, how big it is.
Yeah.
So that's the story of perpetuity and Billy Napier.
Yeah, look, we've run out of time. Again, a great show. Jimmy, great show. Buddy Martin, thank you so much. Jason Caldwell in that first segment. Frank Duffy, AWOL, we're looking for him. We'll be looking on the side of buses.
Frank, you're better in there. You're better than that, Frank. Come on.
Hey, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Go out and help somebody with the expectation of nothing in return. Have a great one, everybody. We'll be back Monday.